Well, it's a good week to be gay. First, Proposition 8, which banned gay marriage in California, was struck down by the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court has now granted legally married same-sex couples the same federal rights as heterosexual couples. And NYC's Gay Pride Week kicks off this weekend. And here to break down the latest news is Ross Murray, Director of News and Faith Initiatives at GLAAD, and Alan Reiff, the Executive Co-Chair of Heritage Pride Week. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So the Supreme Court ruled DOMA unconstitutional and threw out Prop 8. Can you just help us put in context how important are those two decisions?
Sure. The two decisions are very important, and really what I focus on is the real impact on real lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender couples. So for couples in California that were waiting to get married and waiting for this law to get struck down, it now means that they're open to have their marriages being recognized, being able to be married in their home state. And then for the Defense of Marriage Act, having the federal protections for couples, and these are things like immigration, being able to sponsor your partner for a green card and for immigration status. That will help stop a lot of deportations. For taxes and inheritance and health insurance. For military couples, to be able to use the services on a base, to be recognized as the spouse of a military member or a veteran. It's got real tangible impact on couples, and that's what's going to make the big difference.
Absolutely. The impact of this is even global. There are many countries around the world that have marriage equality, and now we are stepping up to plate as well. So your audience is probably watching this and thinking, oh my God, our country could be next. We're inspiring them, and hopefully this will bring more countries into line. And as far as the events this weekend goes, it just brings people out even more from the New York area, around the United States, around the world. We have contingents from Berlin, from some groups in other countries in Europe. So it kind of makes you feel, okay, we've been fighting, and now we've achieved this goal.
Yeah, you've won two major battles this
definitely.
week.
And
how has the LGBT community been reacting to these Supreme Court decisions? What's the feeling out there like?
Jubilation. For young people, their response has been, I'm entitled to this. This is about time. And I was talking to Ross about this in the green room. Young people are like, okay, this is something that I should have gotten a long time ago. And older folks like myself are kind of feeling like we've actually won another battle. Check it off the list. What's next to fight for? The fight hasn't ended.
Right, it'll still continue to go on.
Yeah.
When do you think the next fight's going to be over?
I think transgender inclusion is still an area that this country has not done very well with, and we have a long way to go before transgender people aren't targeted, harassed, having laws that make things more difficult for them to live and move. I also think one step that's going to be important is going to be things like workplace non-discrimination, a federal law. Right now, people can be fired for being gay in 29 states.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And 34 states for being
that.
transgender.
Yeah, and you only have 12 states in this country.
So being gay is still a fireable offense?
It is.
How is that possible?
Especially with discrimination laws.
State laws are different from federal laws. The way this country is set up, which is a great example with marriage equality, the states are in charge of certain things, and the federal protection can protect a broader spectrum. We only have 12 states in the District of Columbia right now that allow marriage, but marriage in one state will be recognized in all states. That doesn't mean you can get married in all states. So that may be the next step.
Okay, well, I think one thing is clear is that people's feeling about homosexuality and same-sex marriages has drastically changed in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what do you think has brought on these change in people's heart or mindsets?
I think the big thing has been knowing someone who is lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender. It's been getting to know real people and hearing their stories and not having them be this different, unique, outside.
Foreign other.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you realize, no, we're actually your family members, we're your coworkers, we go to church with you, we shop next to you in the store, you realize, well, why would I want to create laws that are going to separate this group into another category in terms of marriage?
Someone that I know, someone that I care about, someone that I love.
No one wants to hurt someone they know.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point, because I have a study here to read that in 1992, according to the CBS and New York Times, less than half of Americans Americans actually said they knew someone who was gay. But then in a poll conducted by NBC and the Wall Street Journal last year, it said 8 in 10 people said they actually knew a person who was gay. So do you think that more people being able to interact with people that are gay has changed attitudes as well?
I think more people are coming out. And it starts in high school. You have something called SGA, the Straight Gay Alliances. So children are being raised in a mixed environment that it's okay to be who you are. So you have a whole new group of people growing up being themselves, and you have organizations like Interpride, which is the International Association of Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual Pride Organizers.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, it is. Doing pride events all around the world and raising the visibility. You have corporate sponsors like Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines who are courting our business. So the message is everybody is equal, it's okay, and people are coming out. There have always been lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people. You go back throughout history. But now people are saying, I'm here, I'm queer, and I'm not going to disappear, you know? So,
wait, say that line again?
We're here, we're queer, and we're not going to disappear.
And I think that support, the other important thing is that support has been broader and broader. I think there used to be, the stereotype also was there's populations that were kind of pro-gay and populations that were anti-gay. And I think those stereotypes have now broken down much more, where people say, oh, religious people are so anti-gay. That's not true anymore. People would say, oh, African Americans are so anti-gay. That's not true anymore. We keep seeing this progress has been going across political divides, across races, across ages, across religions. And I think that's been really important.
Let's talk about the role pop culture has played in changing people's attitudes towards gay people. You have shows like Glee, Will and Grace, Modern Family. Is it Ellen DeGeneres is a leading talk show host in the country? Do you think pop culture has had an influence in the way that people perceive?
Absolutely.
Okay. And tell me why.
The people who support our events, who come out, like we call them straight allies. So straight allies are coming out, doing things for the pride associations, for GLAAD, and people look up to them, and it's like, well, if this person who I look up to can support you, why can't I?
On the day the Supreme Court made its rulings about DOMA and Prop 8, GLAAD put out a graphic that talked about the trend in terms of how many LGBT characters were on scripted television, and the increase that's gone from. So in 2003, there were 26 characters on television. And these are scripted shows, not talk shows or reality. And at that point, the level of support for marriage equality was at 33%.
33%?
In 2012, 111 characters, and the support jumped up to 53% for 2012.
Fantastic.
So it's not even knowing the real people in your lives, it's seeing these, fictional characters like Santana on Glee or Mitch and Cam on Modern Family, and starting to feel like you have a relationship with them in addition to the people that you know in your real life.
Well, you even have so many people that are performers, like Lady Gaga, who's a big supporter. There's a rapper who came out recently that said he was gay. So there's all these things that are happening.
Sports now are coming out.
We talked about that.
Positive role models.
So what is your assessment on the amount of people that will now continue to grow in numbers of admitting or coming out of the closet saying they're gay, since there is so much support not only on television, in the arts, but also in the law now?
Right. And I think it's breaking into, again, kind of those stereotypically anti-gay environments. So sports, hip hop. And now that you've had athletes that have come out, that you've had hip hop artists that have come out, that now opens it up for other people to say, yes, I'm going to join. So it starts to become this broader thing to say that the LGBT community doesn't just exist in one little bubble by itself, but actually we're kind of across all of society and a part of all of society.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a great week to be gay, but what if you're a person of color who happens to be a voter? The Voting Rights Act was dealt a huge blow this week by the Supreme Court. Essentially, states have the right to do whatever they want to regarding voting laws, and there's no checks and balances with government anymore. That's a huge problem, particularly for people of color. And in states that have been historically negative towards the idea of people of color voting. How do you feel about that? And what's GLAAD's stance, and what will they be doing in reaction to that devastating blow?
GLAAD was a part of several LGBT organizations that signed on to a statement saying that the Voting Rights Act needs to be upheld. And when it was struck down, wanted to come out right away to say what a bad decision that was. The idea that we don't have protections for people to be able to vote. And I know one person at the rally that happened, said, "Thanks for protecting my marriage. Now, how about my vote?"
And that's a very good point. If you're a gay person of color, it's
Exactly.
a bittersweet week for you, isn't it?
And the last election was particularly difficult. There was a lot of attempts at voter suppression in some of these historic places, but also in some places that probably haven't been in the the historic piece. And so GLAAD was making sure in November to make sure how do we ensure people do get a vote? How do we make sure that happens for people of color, people who have a hard time getting access to ID cards, transgender people who have a really hard time obtaining documents that actually match their name and their gender identity.
That's a very good
This
point.
is
It's going to be a huge issue.
It'll inspire a lot of grassroots movements and local pride organizations, local organizing people coming together to speak up, to try to create some change about what's happened. So you could see a whole new energy move within the various communities, straight as well as gay and lesbian, that's affected by this.
I think you'll see a lot of reaction this weekend.
Well, speaking of this weekend, let's switch gears and talk about all the fun happening this weekend at NYC Gay Pride Weekend. It's kicking off. Tell us a little bit more about it for those that aren't familiar about the annual event.
Sure. Well, the last week of June every year is considered Pride Week in New York City. It commemorates the Stonewall riots, which took place in June in 1970, which what we consider the beginning of the gay rights movement. And President Obama clearly made a link to that from Seneca Falls to Selma to Stonewall. So this is...
Take us back to Stonewall for people who aren't familiar with the riots. They happened in 1969.
In 1969 in June.
Stonewall was a very popular gay hangout in the 60s.
It was a bar that everybody hung out in. It was traditional that the police and mafia would go in and hit up and bother the patrons to make them pay up or arrest them. And that night, people were tired. People were upset. There was a lot of things going on in New York. And the guys said, no, we're not leaving. And the dykes on their motorcycles outside started to defend the transgendered people and the men in suits. And a riot broke out and people were fighting. So when people look at our movement today, they say, why do you always have to have those women driving the motorcycles, those big lesbians? And why do you have the transgendered people? If it wasn't for the transgender and if it wasn't for the dykes on bikes, we would not have a movement today. They stood up and fought for us in 1969. So all around the world, you have Christopher Street Day celebrations in Berlin, in Paris, in Vienna, and everything goes back to Stonewall, which was the geographic beginning of our movement.
But we are familiar with the celebration. We're familiar with the parade, but will there be other activities going on as well?
Absolutely. Tonight is our Pride Rally, which starts right here in New York, up Pier 26 at 7 o'clock. And tomorrow we have a pool party, and we have the women's dance Rapture at Pier 26.
Okay.
And then on Sunday, we have the big dance on the pier and our march down Fifth Avenue. For some, it's a parade. It's however you want to call it. And we have our Pride Festival in the West Village also.
Now the question is, will you have Lady Gaga? Is she showing up tonight or not?
That's a very good rumor.
Spill the beans here.
I've heard that rumor. I guess you'll have to come down to the rally tonight to see.
I think regardless, you'll have straight gay people. Everybody's going to be there trying to see Lady Gaga.
I mean, if I find out for sure, I'll text you.
Okay.
I think you know.
It's a good rumor. But Cher and Deborah Cox will definitely be there on Sunday for the dance on the pier. That I can definitely confirm. And we have some great DJs. And people don't also understand just by coming out to these events, if you're dancing on the pier, if you're walking on the street, that's a statement. You're out. You're proud to be gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual. So you're making it easier for the next generation to come out too.
Well, that's a perfect place to end. Thank you both so much for being here, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You're watching Arise Entertainment 360.